They tell a tale of a time long ago, where competitive EDH games ended as early as the second turn. Now, in modern times, these competitive games are considered to be something of a fiction. However, I'm here to tell you these games exist, and I'm about to show you one right now. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Comedian MTG. Now, right about now, I bet you're reckoning on what sort of deck I could bring to a table like this. Only my best and brightest. This is a deck called Dawnwaker Thrasios, and it's a bit of a pet project of mine. You see, it evolved out of the old evolution decks back in the day, came to something of its own. It's a Bruce, Tarl, and Thrasios combo deck that uses cards like Kinnan Prodigy, Zerta the Dawnwaker, and Power Artifact to combo with monoliths like Basalt and Grim. You might also be finding yourself comboing off with a good old dockside extortionist. That fella can combo with Emil the Blessed, or even Cloudstone Curio if you have yourself another creature. Well, now that you've seen my paper cardboard 6-shooter, let's see what the rest of the opponents are bringing to the table. First up, we have Zachariah. He's on Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy. After that, I'm on Dawnwaker Thrasios. Up in third is Histrion on Brallin Shabraz Curiosity Control. And finally, speaking of curious control, we have a guest from Playing with Power. It's Garrett, and he's playing Mizzet Perrin. Now, I kept my opening 7. It was a bit of a risky hand, but I think it was worth it. The explosive potential underlying here is something worth talking about. It was a Snap, Noble Hierarch, Eldritch Evolution, Forest, Dovin's Veto, Mana Drain, and Wild Growth. Now, as you can see, the mana situation is a little tenuous, but if we get a land in the next few draws, we'll set up with a good amount of ramp in these early turns. As I said, it was a greedy keep, but it ends up paying off pretty well in the end. The idea is to play a small dork at the first turn and then maybe sack it to an Eldritch Evolution to go grab a dockside. You know, I think it's about high noon, so let's get this thing started. Now, our man Zachariah starts off by dumping his hand completely of dorks and rocks. He starts with a simple land into a Mox Diamond, then brings out a Soul Ring, and after that a Bloom Tender. The man's going wild. And as you know, my hand was quite underwhelming, so I just play a Forest and play that Noble Hierarch. Simple and easy. Fearing Garrett's raw power, Histrion hits him with a Cataxian Probe. Let's see what we see. Garrett's got a pretty crazy hand. There's a Mr. Cremora, 2 basic lands, a Merchant Scroll, a Pull from Tomorrow, a Serum Visions, and a Mox Diamond. Now, he drops the Mox Diamond and the Remora, which do make me feel a little bit better about the dockside, but on the other hand, not so great about the non-creature spells that are littered in my hand. He does some scrying with his Serum Visions and then passes it off. Now, much debate erupts on the table at this point about whether the fish is going to be fed by Zachariah's turn. He plays a Kinnan, which is fine, but then starts dumping non-creatures. He drops a Prismatic Lens, which taps for mana, but also means fish gets a draw here. He then taps the Bloom Tender for 2 blue and a green. Using the 2 blue, casts a Transmute Artifact. Now, Histrion, knowing he's going for a Basalt Monolith and infinite mana, counters with a Swan Song, but Zachariah has a Veil of Summer waiting in the wings. Unfortunately for Zachariah, he makes a fatal error at this point. See, he sacrifices his Prismatic Lens without tapping it for mana. To explain why this is an unfortunate turn of events, let's go over to the text of Transmute Artifact. See, what happens is the artifact you sack allows you to tutor for the artifact in your library. However, if the artifact in your library costs more, you do have to pay the difference. Now, Zachariah has actually no mana floating right now, and therefore cannot get an artifact of converted mana cost 2 or more without it having to sacrifice itself. Meaning, Basalt Monolith, his combo piece, never ends up being able to be fetched to the table. Alright, back to it. Because of the blunder, he puts a Felwar stone on the field, and therefore, not respecting the fish, plays a Paradise Mantle, giving him yet another draw. Lack of respect for Garrett in this game is genuinely overwhelming. Oh well. The mantle gets attached to Kinnan and he uses it to play a Kiora's follower, cause you know, he needed more ramp. Me being the lucky piece of shit that I am, I end up ripping the land off the top of my library that I needed to go off this turn. Because I also don't apparently respect Garrett, I throw a wild growth on this land here to get myself a little bit of extra mana. And luckily for me, this situation is exactly like I said at the beginning of this game. I can sacrifice my Noble Hierarch right now to get a very potent Dockside Extortionist. Here comes our little goblin friend, and he makes me 7 treasures. I snap down this card in my hand, which just happens to be a snap, pun intended. And I bounce that Dockside, put it right back into my hand. Now the cool thing about Snap here is that I have a wild growth on my land, so it actually nets me even more mana. Gambit ends up being very successful. I bounce Dockside, and guess what? I slam it back down on the table once again. When Dockside resolves this time around, I am up to 11 mana. And this is where I know I can really go for the win here. I transmute a Muddle the Mixture, which allows me to go look for any 2-drop. I grab Finale of Devastation. I then cast Finale, letting him draw another card, which allows me to go grab one of my combo pieces. With Emil on the battlefield, I only need to pay 3 mana to flicker Dockside and therefore make infinite treasures. With infinite mana, I play my commander, draw a ridiculous portion of my deck, till I find a silence. I'll silence my opponents so they can't interact, Noctis Revival, put Finale on top, play all my creatures and swing for a good 40 billion damage. And that, my friends, is the tale of how one man won on the second turn of an EDH game. Now you may choose not to believe this story. You may choose to treat it as that of myth or fiction. But I present you with only the evidence I have at hand. Thank you for joining me in this tale. If you would like to see my deck from today's game, that'll be in the link below, as well as a link to our Patreon if you'd like to support this burgeoning YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us for Comedian MTG. Have an amazing week.